Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, President and CEO of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and award-winning author. And welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have special guest, Miss Amy Anderson, founder of Wild Coffee Marketing. Amy Anderson's 28-year marketing career led her to branch out and open her own small consulting firm, Wild Coffee Marketing. She shares her entrepreneurial journey, tips for business branding, and mindful leadership and marketing mistakes to avoid. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Miss Amy Anderson. Hey, Amy, how are you?
I'm so good. Thanks so much, Kimberly, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited to have you on, and especially knowing what you've been going through, being that you're there in Florida. You know, since we conversated a few minutes before we started. So thank you, because I to be honest with you, I probably would have bailed out. So I would have been the person like, yep, not doing this today.
Oh, it's a little spot of normalcy.
Yes.
After a pretty big hurricane down here, it just feels good to have a conversation about what I do and what I love in the midst of a lot of sort of chaos down here. So I'm really happy to be here with you.
Well, again, like I said, I appreciate it, and so let's get this thing rocking and rolling, because I really want to learn more about what Wild Coffee Marketing is all about. But before we dive into that, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit more about who Amy Anderson really is?
Well, as you had mentioned, I've been doing this, I can't believe it said 28 years, because now I'm in my 30th year.
Wow.
Of working in marketing. And, after graduating from college, I really found this passion for marketing and media. So my first job out of college was at 17 Magazine, The Beloved, and I've gone through the last many years working for media companies, on the consumer side of marketing, on the business-to-business side of marketing, mostly for big companies. And I never really saw myself as an entrepreneur. It even sounds strange to me when I'm talking to people like you and small business initiatives, because I was a corporate girl. I mean, I was good at it, loved it. And then I had a change in my life, and I got divorced with 2 young boys.
Wow.
And I had an opportunity to try to be on my own and do the work I loved for multiple companies. So I had the flexibility to be with my children while we were going through this transition, and also to support my family. And that was about 10 years ago. And the last 5, I've been with my former manager, actually, who hired me in 2004, and we teamed up, Solomon Monsier and I teamed up and started a boutique consulting firm, because we believe that companies can really benefit from client-side marketers. We don't act like a traditional agency. Okay. We act like an extension of our clients' teams, and that's what we've built out. So now we have 17 team members in about 7 states, and had a really interesting client roster. So started from my living room 5 years ago, and I'm here now, and it's so fun for me. I never thought I'd be in a position sort of talking about entrepreneurship, because I never fancied myself as one. So,
all right. Well, and I love it's amazing how we, like you said, you love your job and you're great at what you did in the corporate entity, but it's amazing how life takes you in different directions, and then utilizing everything that you have, you put in and poured into yourself, and now you're pouring into others. So that's even more of a blessing, because you have the amount of control and the things that the capabilities you can put into people that really need that. And like you said, you're not stuck into one environment. So it's nice to know that, we sometimes have to take that seat back and look at ourselves and say, you know what, I've got to do things differently. And even though you were going through, nobody wants to go through a divorce. It's always the worst thing in the world you have to think about. And it's somewhat tragic, but at the same time, that tragedy turned you into something much more beautiful. You blossomed in a way that you didn't, like you said, you didn't think about. You didn't think about.
Oh, I never thought.
Doing
right, and
this.
it's hard to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because my personal life became the impetus for my entrepreneurial journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people, I wouldn't be honest if I said, oh, well, I always had a side hustle and I always wanted to do my own thing and I was selling lemonades on the corner when I was growing up. That wasn't me. And and I had a skill and an experience base in marketing, but that doesn't necessarily translate into successful entrepreneurship. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you're always selling, right? Which I have failed at in my career before. You're always selling, and you're HR and accounting, right? So you have to take a much broader role in business and just specializing in your skill set. And it's something, I mentor high school business ownership and entrepreneurship students here locally. And that's one of the things that I tell them is that, you don't realize that you wear every single hat.
That's right.
When you run your business. And sales is the most important one, because if you are not selling in some capacity or generating new business, then you don't have a business. That's
right. Exactly. And that's the thing, is that a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we don't, always want to look at ourselves as being salespeople. It's like being the car salesman that you don't want to be, right? And a lot of people feel like they want to just hone in on their talent and their expertise, which is fine. But in that journey of learning how to become an entrepreneur, you have to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at. And then how are you going to take those resources that you have, that you don't have, where are you going to find them? So those are some of the conversations and things that I find that people truly don't think about when they're coming into business, because they're so excited about just doing what they love. But like you said, there's all these other pieces that come with it that, in order for you to be successful, you still got to do A, B, C, D, and F. It's not just that piece, but you can obviously continue to focus on your expertise, but you still need to fill in those blanks to be successful. So talk to me about the name. I love the name Wild Coffee Marketing. How did you come up with that name, and what does it represent?
Well, thank you for asking about that. It's so fun to talk about. Wild coffee was actually is a native plant to South Florida and was growing outside my window when I was working on my first business plan. And I was living in Miami at the time, and it was vibrant. I had to cut it back all of the time. It has shiny leaves. It's not a coffee that you can brew like Arabica, but it would probably be a little bitter if you did. But it is this vibrant, fast-growing, shiny, beautiful plant that is resilient. And it's funny we're talking about it now, because 2 days after Hurricane Ian, this past week, or I guess it was last Friday, I went for a run on our greenway, and it was underwater. And the storm surge from the river came up, and there is a big area of wild coffee with a botanical sign out front, because it's a botanical greenway. And I had to stop for a minute, and it had survived, and it looked beautiful and perfect. And it was so representative to me of sort of who we are as a team, how we help our clients grow. That's very sort of organic and natural to us as marketers. And we are very energized as a group of people. And we love what we do. We're very close, especially for a distributed team. You really have to work at that and build your culture. But this plant I found that translates into coffee and amped up and energized and caffeinated and all those great things is actually something that's natural and native to here. So in naming companies, Kimberly, as you know, right now is hard, because a lot of things are taken. So to find something with stopping power that's representative of what you do for your clients, we were very lucky to sort of stumble upon that. And it was great to see it this week growing and surviving this hurricane. So
yeah, like you said, it was meant to be in that perspective. So and then understanding what the wild coffee, I'd never heard of a plant called wild coffee before. So see how you educated me already tonight. So this is awesome.
We'll have a little botanical discussion on the side, right?
That's right. But like I said, it was just such an interesting name, because we all know that marketing is, it's the normal name, and a lot of people will use that as their guess you kind of would say the forefront, the face of the business, versus the way you kind of did it in my opinion, is that it's like, yeah, we know it's marketing, but there's something else there that's more important than just the marketing piece. So when you're working with clients, I guess talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey, because I know women, I believe, is predominantly what you do work with or whom you work with overall. So kind of talk about that journey of what it looks like for them and why is the marketing piece so important in a business?
Well, especially now, right, when there's a lot in the media about an impending, recession. Mm-hmm. Some call it a soft bounce. Interest rates are rising. And, if you look in Harvard Business Review and McKinsey does a lot of studying on this, what do you do when you're facing a situation where there might be somewhat of a downturn? Mm-hmm. And I think that marketing becomes more critical than ever. And it is shown in the research that those companies who choose to invest and actually end up grabbing a much higher share of voice during these times. Mm-hmm. So I think, we believe that every company needs a chief marketing officer, even a small one, mm-hmm. because you have to have something built on strategy. But you may not need a CMO all the time. So everything that we do is really rooted in marketing strategy, mm-hmm. looking at overall performance indicators for a business. Where are you trying to go? Where are you now? What are your threats? What are your strengths and weaknesses? So build out that strategy, then build on the foundation, which is who are you talking to? Mm-hmm. What are you trying to say? And where do you find them? So actually, right, Kimberly, it sort of boils down to a lot of sort of basic principles, but without those, we don't believe that marketing programs can be successful. And we work with companies that, range from revenue of 10 million up to 100, mm-hmm. but the approach is always the same, no matter the size. Mm-hmm. Small business through bigger companies.
Right. And for most business, that seems to be the part where everybody struggles the most is, they think, okay, once they're out there, it's like, oh, everybody's going to come. Yes, you have that initial rush, of drive of like, oh, this is interesting. But then the sustaining themselves is the most important piece. And that's when you're talking about by having someone there to help you keep that marketing developed, because words do matter. Visually it matters. So how does it all come back, to the business so that people can come to you continually and keep either the same customers and then bring on new customers? So what does that look like for somebody who's new in the business? And like you said, if there's the same steps that you use, but for somebody who's new they're really trying to understand that marketing piece, how do you guys get them to open their mindset and then keep them moving forward on that piece?
Well, we do some really interesting positioning work, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that small business owners need to really look at competitive alternatives to them. Mm-hmm. So if someone's not buying from you or working with you, who are they using? Are they doing it themselves? If mm-hmm. it's a service-based, or who else are they buying? And then once you have that competitive set, you can look at what you offer that they don't, right? So what are those key features that you have? From there, what value do those features have that the competitors don't, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can start to find the market where you play in. We really believe that positioning yourself against your competitors and in a market, what market are you going to win? And I think that's a lot of times people sort of will just go down a path or start developing products, talking about service, and really don't hone in on what they do that others don't, that gives them an advantage that people mm-hmm. care about. Mm-hmm. That enables them to win a market, right? So we are relaunching a SaaS company, a software as a service company, and we did this exercise with them for 4 hours this week with their executive team. And that work is really, really important. And then you can take that, then you develop messaging. Mm-hmm. Then you develop the visuals from there because you know who you are, and then you develop your brand. And I think that owned media, we call it, like your website, and your owned media, think about the fact that people maybe pay attention for 2 to 3 seconds in a scroll. Right. You have one shot at it. Right. So you really need to sort of focus on making sure on a mobile version, on a desktop version, that you have 3 calls to action above the fold, right? What mm-hmm. do you want people to do? Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to try something? Do you want mm-hmm. them to see your top products? And really think about that very small piece of real estate. And then you understand sort of who you are, what you're doing, and what you're going to say to that customer that comes and visits you.
Right. And I definitely agree with that, the call to action. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, especially when you're small, because you're trying to fulfill so many different things and then trying to figure that piece out. You think you have the answers, but then when you start realizing that, the customers, people are asking questions, but are they becoming customers? Are they really, focused on the business and what am I doing wrong, or how can I do things differently in order to make sure that you can actually close the deal? I think that to me would be considered the hardest part. And I can even say in my own business that part was something I had to learn and to understand and realize the part in marketing, who are you trying to reach? What is it you're trying to close on that deal? And so what do you, I guess, tell these people who are, new into business? And like I said, you're teaching high schoolers as well about business. What is the focus that you put to them when you're talking about business, whether you're starting new or you're in this marketing field? And some people just want to do marketing. What do you tell them? Because we all know social media is the big thing, but what do you do beyond the social media?
Oh, well, this foundation work and the strategy is really important, right? And the customer journey piece, right? So we talk about a little bit about positioning and branding and your website and sort of owning that and what you want people to do. But then also to really look at the journey people are taking, right? One is awareness. That's knowing who you are. One is consideration, right? So that they're thinking about you and they're considering alternatives and competitors and they're trying to decide. So that first they need to know you. Then they need to see if they like you. Then they need to know if they trust you, right? So it's sort of that journey that people are going through when considering. And we really love to focus on that because then you can look at all the other touch points, right? So social media is a part of that, or PR or blog writing or all those things. But you can fill those touch points in, but you really need to look at the overall journey. How do they become aware of you and find you? How do they consider you? How do they decide? How do they purchase? And then how do they become loyal brand advocates and become repeat purchasers or advocate for your brand, right? So positioning and then the customer journey. And when I'm talking to the high school students, they ask me what the hardest part is of all this. And I think, and especially for women too, right? Like really understanding your financials early.
Yes.
I would have hired a CFO 2 years before we did. Wow. Because bookkeepers will help you close the books and they'll help you, tax planning, all of that and sort of looking behind you. But a CFO will help you forecast ahead, right? So understanding the cost of your goods, the cost of your services and your labor, especially in this market, right? But how do you forecast your sales? What is the percentage of closing? What kind of gross profit margins do you have? Like that forward thinking is really important. And there are companies out there that offer fractional CFO services, just like we are fractional CMOs who happen to own our own agency, right? So I think the focus on the financials is really important and something that I wish I would have blossomed a little bit earlier with that, but somehow through COVID and everything else, it's sort of figured out those fundamentals.
Right. And I agree with what you're saying, because I think a lot of times, like I said, when we're coming into business, we're thinking about little steps, but not really thinking, can't say, I was thinking 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, what this is going to look like in the business. So, having a CFO, I would have never personally thought about that up front. Definitely the tax part about that was probably the main thing that you think about, because I don't want to deal with IRS. I don't want Uncle Sam knocking on my door saying, hey, this business is closing down because you're not doing this part. But to sit down and actually think, to have somebody do that portion, I think a lot of us as small business owners look at it as just something that corporate companies do, not small businesses. And obviously that's far from the truth, because you do need to understand your financial side of the business as well in order to move forward, not just for the first. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Exactly. And even understand, what kind of clients do you want? What kind of products can you sell? And we looked at it, we have retainer clients who pay us every month and we are their full outsourced team. And then we do projects. So what types of clients, engagements, products are most profitable? And so you have a different way, it'll point you in different directions if you understand sort of margin by service, by product, be able to forecast cash flow, things like that. But I think also that business owners need to look on a quarterly basis from a planning perspective, not just financial, just in general. What are your goals for the quarter? And then do 1, 3, and 5 year planning, right?
Right.
So we always, and I love revisiting those too. Like in 2019, where did we think we'd be at the end of 2020?
Right.
Which is kind of a joke for all of us, right, with COVID. And we were close. We weren't that far off, but we did have to reset. You know, in your how does employee turnover affect those plans, right? It affected ours. So, that's the part that if you can really embrace sort of the financial forecasting, get somebody to help you look ahead, and then also be really sort of looking at your plans so that you can build product services into that that are go according to that. So my business partner is really adept at that. I was more of sort of the creative marketing brain, and then I've grown with my operational skills over the last few years. And I didn't plan to do that, but it's something that I'm really excited about, that I have a much better sort of view as a small business owner and then advising bigger companies on their marketing. So.
Right. So during 2020, did you see a huge amount of people coming to you guys saying, hey, how are we going to run this business now? How do we market? Because like you said, you had to pivot. Some people, weren't doing the virtual side. So did you see a huge increase of business in that portion when it came to marketing?
We did, we don't do a lot of sort of consumer brick and mortar, but we are the outsourced team of record for a company called Stretch Zone. And Stretch Zone has 213 currently open. They're stretching locations where it's practitioner-assisted stretching. They're a very fast-growing franchise, but imagine during COVID in the wellness and fitness space, when you couldn't be together in public, how we sort of had to pivot for them, support their franchise network, things like that. And then a lot of our clients went through that. Our boat building client, Carolina Skiff, couldn't make boats fast enough at that point because people were so ready to be out on the water.
Right.
But then you have supply chain issues with fiberglass and paint. And so I just feel like the world was sort of all upside down. And I think back on it, Kimberly, and I'm sure we can all sort of reflect on how nimble so many of us had to become, and so many of our clients, right? That, it drove innovation in a lot of ways, especially sort of in the restaurant hospitality area. And consumers demanded it. And I think a lot of companies sort of rose to the occasion, and now it's sort of the normal way of doing business. So.
Right. Because what it made you do was sit back and think about the things that you weren't really prepared to think about, because everything was running smooth. And then literally it's like overnight, the whole world shut down, so to speak, so to have to go back and do some of that pivoting, or realize that, we work better being the virtual versus being the brick and mortar, or vice versa. I think there was a lot of great lessons learned. The thing that concerns me, I think now that things are somewhat getting, or as we call, back to normal, everything is really going back to that direction, that people are still, they didn't learn the lessons that they should have learned during 2020. Are you seeing some of that within the business, or do you feel everything is kind of, leaner, everything is working fine? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, this whole hybrid office environment. I think a lot of companies aren't really sure how to treat that, right? Because it's a lot. I think that people have really enjoyed working from home. I think the productivity is equal. I think it's built a lot of trust in many ways between employers and their team members. We started Wild Coffee as a distributed team 5 years ago. Okay. We didn't see any need. Everyone's always worked from home because we were on client site, and I wanted to hire the best talent out there and not be limited to a geographic area.
Right.
But when you do have that, right, how do you build a culture when people are in 7-10 states, right? So that's something that I have focused really hard on. We've built a culture based on kindness, and I think that comes out of COVID. Also, I think we had that before, certainly. It's the nature that Solomon and I have in our approach to business and our team. But I think we saw people as sort of whole human beings. We had employees home with toddlers, with small children. We had employees with sick family members, or, things that, and so I think that kindness and compassion, flexibility, trust, understanding that people will get their work done. I'm not really concerned about the 9 to 6 as much. It's more work-based, and I love that they love their flexibility. And I think that keeping your team sort of happy and building that trust and working for them creates an environment that people want to work in. And, you have to have it now because
Yes.
employees still have a lot of choices. The labor marketing's tightening, right?
Yes,
but
it
they still
is.
have choices.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make your business one where people want to be?
Right.
I'm honored that they made a stop in their career with us. It's a big deal to me.
Mm-hmm. And that's the difference, though, that, when I'm listening to you talk about your business and, it's more like a family. It's not so much just, hey, these are my employees. Oh, yeah. And I think that's where sometimes people get lost, even though we all realize that you still have the employer-employee role and responsibility. But at the same time, excuse me, if you want to hold on to the best, you do have to, think about some of the things that are humanized. And, you don't always need to have the 40 hours a week and all that other craziness in order to get something accomplished. It's been proven every day.
Right. And I was just reading a study in the UK they're doing with 3,000 workers where they are doing a 4-day work week and they're paying them the same amount for 20% less time and asking them to do the same amount of work in 4 days. And the initial results are really positive. For a lot of, men and women are both sort of heavily involved in 2022 in their households and their families, whether they have children or not. There's a lot that needs to be done in life, right? And a lot of people say that 2-day weekends are not enough. So, for us, if you can get your work done in a shorter period of time and you're going to go to the playground, or you're going to go have lunch with a friend, we know that relationships play a very, big part in people's happiness. So, I think that you can demand great work and excellence with your team while still creating a culture of compassion, of candid communication and openness and seeing them as a whole person. But I think it needs to be conscious. It's something that you really need to want to create and find ways to do it. And I think we've done that. I mean, we're very close. We flew everybody in July to South Florida.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And all spent time together and asked them at the beginning of the meeting, what do you want to accomplish this week? What's really important to you? And everybody said just spending time together and getting to know each other and having fun together. That was really important. So we did impart lots of business knowledge and sharing presentations, but it was also a lot of fun. And I think that was really good for everybody. So I think it's beyond team building. I think it's human connection building, Exactly.
But, the way that you guys are doing things, some people or some corporations or entities, small business, they do need to take note, though, because there's still some of that attitude of, well, I need to see you. Well, you didn't see the person for almost 3 years. So, how is that any different? Either they're going to do the work or they're not going to do the work. Because I always tell people the proof is in the pudding, right? It's not always about hovering over people in order to make sure that the work is getting done. And there are obviously some people who really do want to be in the environment of working around others because they feel that they do better with that. So having the option, I think, is very important. But just recognizing that there needs to be that constant availability there, I think, is even more important. Like I said, that was what continues to make you successful at what your business is doing, your company as a whole, and you continue to maintain the people you need to have on site. So I think that's even more important. So just a couple more questions, but you said that you didn't have a podcast show. Now you know that you're talking to me now. These are something you really do need to think about. Because Amy, you have a lot of great information to share.
Oh, thank you. And listen, I love to talk, Kimberly. And it's what I do all day. And that's the thing too. We talk about, clarity and team members taking breaks and having relationships and doing things. I work from home like the rest of our team does. Right. We've tried physical office space. The team didn't really want it. We had it in a couple of different cities and they weren't into it. But, a lot of us are sitting on phones and on Zoom or, Microsoft Teams meetings all day. Right. It's really important to have that human connection that goes beyond the screen. And so it's really nice for me to have conversations with people like you because I've been sitting in a room by myself for 12 hours.
Exactly.
And my children, I'm an empty nester for the first time ever. My 15-year-old moved out early to go play soccer in another city, and he's training twice a day, and he's homeschooled. So he's part of an MLS soccer academy, and then my elder son is in college. Okay. So I think even for me as a business leader, my team has compassion for me, right? When you model respect or you model empathy and you're good to your team, they'll be good to you too. And I think as leaders that helps us because we're all human beings in this together trying to build and create and support our families. And so I think it sort of all goes around and especially with this hurricane, the notes I received from them and that check-ins were really, really special for me. So.
Well, yeah,
so I think love belongs in business, right?
Exactly,
So,
exactly, and that's part of the problem. It's like I said, we do understand. There's the employer-employee scenario, because we obviously know that people are getting paid to do their job, but to be able to have that comfort is I think is probably the most important thing, and that's the reason why people will continue to stay. They want to work harder for you because they believe in who you are. They believe in the company. They're willing to put that extra 100% in there. And because they know that you'll back them up when they need to have that backup, on a consistent basis. So I think that's. Oh,
absolutely. Right. But that's that safety factor, right?
Exactly.
I want them to feel safe so that they can be innovative and create and be happy. And it's also, we have sort of a unique view because, I'm a small business owner with my business partner, but I'm also advising other businesses and other CEOs and executive teams. So I have this sort of dual view into other cultures, other business process, plus what we're doing for ourselves. And I think always it's sort of that why not be pleasant and good to each other and create safety so everyone can do great work, right? I started my career in New York City in the early 90s when there were no rules.
Wow.
Right? There were no harassment rules. It was still the 2-martini lunch when I was in the media business.
Yep.
And it was there were no sort of workplace protections. There was no awareness around the human experience for all of us back then, right?
Right. That's right.
So it's a much different world. We know so much more and we should be able to do so much better.
Absolutely. Well, I absolutely agree with that. And, it's a continual struggle just for some, but each day things will get better. And, just like you're saying, even where you're at currently right now in Florida and what you've been through with the hurricane, people are starting to show their softer side, realizing that, we live in a world and community that everybody's going to need somebody at some point. So, showing a little bit of love, whether it's in the office or outside the office, doesn't mean that you're creepy. It just means that it's the normal human nature of who we are as individuals. And it doesn't hurt to be kind, but still be able to be fruitful, still be able to get the things you need to get done. So, what you guys are doing, I love, and I always enjoy hearing these type of stories because we don't hear enough of them. It's not shared enough about why it's important to have the type of business you have and then have the type of people that you are surrounded by. So I do appreciate hearing this evening. But I also want to know, what tips would you provide to somebody who is new going into this journey? Besides what we've talked about, is there anything else special that you would like to share with somebody who's going to the business?
Well, I think, just to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? If someone had sat me down and said, oh, you're going to consult now on your own, you have a lot of uncomfortable moments that are coming your way, and you need to get really comfortable with those. And I even told one of our team members today, we were doing a strategy session with a potential new client, and I said, I don't always know what I'm doing, but I know enough to walk into a situation with courage and do my best and share what I know and be honest about what I don't. So I think that, you don't have to know everything. And it has uncomfortable moments, but you just sort of embrace those and say, well, here comes another gift. Right. Because I'm going to have to figure this out now, And do you know Lovey Ajayi Jones? She's an author. She's Nigerian.
I've heard of the name.
A background. She's out of Chicago. Yes, and she has a podcast and a book, and I think it has troublemakers in it. And she wrote a post yesterday that said, being a CEO is hard, and I'm tired, and the decision making is difficult, and sometimes I just don't want to do it. but I forge on. And I think that business owners probably feel that way sometimes. I wish I just had a job today.
Right.
And I certainly feel that way.
Right.
I'm responsible for 17 families and their income.
Exactly. So it weighs. It can weigh on you. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It does. But you forge on.
Yeah, right.
So it's that just keep swimming,
Exactly. Just
we
keep
have
going.
To do.
Yeah.
Right. And just being here with you tonight, after we just went through this hurricane and a block away from me, everyone has their possessions in the street because that's how close the storm surge got. And they had to take everything out of their house because it's wet and got everything a block away. And I just think that, to show each other compassion, and you never know, as you said earlier, what someone's going through in their lives, and take that into consideration and really look at the micro interactions that you have with everyone, like holding a door for someone, helping someone, asking someone how they are, especially on your team when you're distributed because you don't know. Right. Really listen and watch people's body language, watch what they're not saying. I think we can all make a difference in entrepreneurial sort of endeavors by just creating really cool places that people feel comfortable and safe and they can do great work in.
Exactly. Oh, well, that was perfect. You said things there that I guess it should be common sense, but common is not always common. So, and I think the thing is that, people really just don't always understand that, even though we want to be business people, but having that weight on your shoulders and having to carry that torch to make sure that everybody is okay, and not just being satisfied, but ensuring, like we were saying, or kind of that safety net. You are constantly, you and your partner are that constant safety net. So you have to have that gel. You have to be able to continue to grow, continue to put up with the things that you weren't really anticipating being in business, but it's a part of it. And so, like I said, like you said, the entrepreneurial journey, it is what it is. It is definitely a journey that you will never forget. And for those who aren't entrepreneurs, you still are a part of the journey, because we wouldn't be successful without those people. So that is the key to everything.
Oh, they are everything. They are everything, especially in a service-based business. Their brains, their ideas, their energy, how they interact with clients. I mean, I'm so grateful for them. And then even if you're selling products, like the people who are making them, if you put sort of goodness in good intentions into all of that, I think the ripple effect, in this life can be huge. And I think that that's really exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Amy, it has been a wonderful conversation. And though, of course, before you go, could you tell everybody, like, if you have anything special coming up that you want to communicate with us about, and then also how we can reach you?
Absolutely. No, I would love for people to sort of check out our work and the types of things that we're doing for clients at wildcoffeemarketing.com. And I can be found on LinkedIn as Amy Anderson at Wild Coffee. And then I just want to urge people, when you see sort of disasters in areas of different parts of the country, to always look, even if it's $5, to look for Lee and Charlotte County hurricane relief. And, if this is after that time, to just look for a way in your community that you can do something good. I'm just reminded of that because of the storm and what's happened here. So I just want to encourage people to do that and do some good.
All right. Well, we definitely appreciate you coming on after everything you've been through, and we will keep you in our prayers and everybody else that surrounds you, because we, hope that everybody can get things back to normal as soon as they can. We know it's going to be a long haul, though, for most people, because it was pretty devastating. We haven't seen that type of devastation in Florida for many, many years. So again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to hopefully talking to you again in the future. And you have yourself a
I would love it.
evening.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me, Kimberly. I loved it.
Absolutely.
Right,
it was my pleasure. All right. So for everybody else, we had a great conversation this evening. And, I always like to say a little quick something before I close my show tonight, that I hope you learned the importance of what marketing is really about and how you stand out from the rest of the people and what's important about running a business and being an entrepreneur. It's not just the name. It's not just the product. It's not just about the services. It's a much bigger picture when you're trying to be successful. So always think about it in the back of your mind as you're listening through this conversation, and in the future, as you're continuing to think about, do you want to get into business? How do you market yourself? What would you do differently? And if you don't have the answers, you need to reach out. Make sure that you don't consistently just hold on and believe that you have all the answers, because we don't. That's the reason why you have amazing people that you want to surround yourself around. If you don't have those people and you want to move forward, you want to continue to see your business grow, please feel free to reach out to me at any time so we can continue to see your dreams grow. And you can reach out to me at Kimberly at WSBILC@gmail.com. And let's have that conversation about how to continue moving forward. If I don't have the answers for you, I will definitely connect you with the appropriate people that you need to have in order to make those dreams continue to grow. And of course, if you want to hear more about your Resource for Success podcast, we do now accept monetary donations to support the podcast, and we accept them through Cash App or PayPal, Good Pods tip jar, or you can go directly to the website at www.wsbilc.com. Again, we do like to thank you all for listening to us tonight. We will be back next week with more amazing guests. Be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcast. But until then, enjoy your evening and good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.